I want to welcome everybody to this gorgeous day where there's so much to talk about. Kasim joined me and we were both like, oh, like I didn't know that there was a new reason for me to be upset because I haven't been online for the last 8 minutes. But please tell us what just happened.
Well, one, it's great to always reconnect with you, Liz. But no, what just happened today is that Republicans changed the Senate rules to confirm 48 of Trump's judges in one foul swoop. And that's infuriating for a number of reasons, what we'll talk about. But the same day, Democrats said, you know what? Here's how we're going to respond. We're going to vote unanimously with Republicans to make October 14th a National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk. That's how they fought back to Republicans changing the Senate rules to confirm 48 of Trump's MAGA judges. And this is why we can't have nice things, Liz. This is why.
I think it's one of those times where I don't know if you felt this recently where and maybe this is how I actually think this is how most Americans feel, where you kind of hate both sides. You know, you're feeling really disappointed, not just by sort of one half of the country and how they govern, but sort of everybody. And
Yeah.
actually, I think that could be a uniting. Maybe that's what unites us. You know, to come together in these really dividing times.
The thing is, I had a call this morning at an interview with Congressman Mark Pecan of Wisconsin, staunch progressive, a fighter, someone who wants all the things that the majority of Americans want: universal health care, meaningful climate justice, meaningful economic policy, reproductive justice, has called out the genocide in Palestine. I mean, you name it through and through. And to his credit, he said almost the exact same thing. He goes like, he's like, I need our Democratic colleagues to start fighting and stop being so weak and pathetic about this. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but like yesterday, Kamala Harris's article came out about her presidential run, and she said that my top pick for VP was actually Pete Buttigieg. But I didn't know if America was ready for a gay man to be vice president or president. And so I went with Tim Walz. Now, look, I like Tim Walz. I think he did a great job. I went hard to the paint for Tim Walz. But I think that kind of exemplifies the problem here. You know, Republicans are like, well, Democrats are like, we have to have the most perfect candidate,
Yeah.
perfect poll tested, perfect words, perfect, pedigree, you name it. And
Yeah.
then, no, we're going to go with somebody else because it's less risky. And Republicans are like, let's find a blog bro, a podcast bro, and make him FBI director
Yeah.
and call it a day.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, they seem pretty confident in their podcast, bro. So yeah, I'm gonna vote for that guy. And I'm just so sick of the cowardice, the lack
Yeah.
of fight, because like, what more do you want at this point? It's
Mhm.
abject fascism, and you're still sitting here writing strongly worded letters. Like I saw Congressman Pecan, to his immense credit, he goes, yeah, I agree. It's ridiculous. Like, why
Yeah.
are we not fighting? And I don't know if there's a good answer to that.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing all of that. You are like, I don't know how you retain so much information. It's incredible. And you go for runs and have you have a whole ass family. And it's very, very impressive to me. But yeah, like, I think that's so fascinating. One thing that has heartened me a little bit in all of this, again, looking for any kind of like morsel of joy in this just like hellfire dumpster fire that we've been in. Is actually that I have noticed that on both sides, there are people who are dissenting. And I think what you're pointing out is exactly right on the left. And I think we're seeing it again, not to give Republicans credit. But, we saw it with the Epstein files with, Rep. Massey collaborating with Ro Khanna on ensuring that the Epstein files are released. And even in some of the responses to Kimmel being canceled, which if you don't know about that, leave this live because your life is infinitely better than the reality that we're all living in right now. But I as we were going live, I saw that obviously there's like your usual stooges and like clowns who are just like agreeing with whatever Trump does. But there are people who are dissenting within the party because obviously we don't have to say this. It's so obvious. This is an assault on free speech. Kimmel has protected speech. So it is, in many respects, just like beyond, the pale. So I like to see that. And I think that is the kind of thing, and not to give politicians too much credit either, but I do think that that's the thing that keeps people civically engaged,
Yeah.
right? Because trust has been completely eroded, I think, again, on all sides. And very often when I went across the country, in the lead up to last election, that's what I found. I found that people, I mean, sure, there were some like overt Trump fans, people who were like yelling his name and proudly wearing his merch and all that stuff. But most of the people just were like, I kind of don't like either of them, but I'm going to vote for the one I like the least. And so I think when they see people within the party, not just kind of bending the knee or going with the party line, I think that that's heartening, but it's not happening enough. And I can't believe that happened with the Day of Remembrance. Like
Yeah.
I just
I, and I think it said like a day to remember all the good contributions he's made and how he helped the civic. I mean, it's a bunch of crap. Well, like I'm I'm like solutions focused, right? So my mind always goes to how are we going to fight back? How are we going to
yeah,
address this? One thing I'm doing is I'm specifically working and only supporting those candidates who are just unapologetic about this stuff.
yeah,
And there's some amazing candidates. There's Francesca Hong running for governor of Wisconsin,
love
first
it.
Asian American woman. She's so progressive. Abdul Al Sayed running for Senate in Michigan, only one not taking APAC or corporate PAC money. You've got Salam Bhatti running for Congress in Virginia. We have, like, if you look around, there's like 30, 40, 50 of these candidates running
Yeah,
across the country. And, for me, you're like, how do I keep it all together? One way is I channel the rage. Like,
yeah,
I'll channel it to this and like find people doing the work and support them. The other way is going on a 13-mile run definitely gets the rage out and helps you focus. I don't know about you, but like after I exercise, my level of focus goes through the roof. It's like
I
I feel like I'm like Superman at that point. It goes through even though I'm tired, but mentally I'm much sharper. But anyway,
right.
that's kind of how I'm handling this. How
Yeah,
do you
yeah, yeah,
handle it?
yeah. I
What do you
feel
do?
like I would have, and please sound off in the comments if you feel the same way. I feel like I would have my body would have an opposite reaction to running 13 miles. I think my body would be like very upset at me. But I would love to be one day as fit as you, so
Okay.
that running 13-mile actually energizes me instead of just further extracting energy from me. But what do I do? Okay, what do I do? Well, I'm gonna say it, doing things like this.
Mhm.
And every time actually, okay, every time I feel despair, I do text you and I say, let's go live. And I love that you are always down to do it. And I always know that it'll make me feel better. Like Kat Wilson, RN says, trust has gone everywhere I go except for you guys that we've known for years and trust. Otherwise, nobody. Like that. I mean, I would love for you to be able to trust more people and for that to be a possibility for all of us. But it does like reconnect me to what's going on. Also, it's community. Like it's like we're in this together. There is something, so isolating and like when you're yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I was on a flight yesterday when the Kimmel news broke and I just was like alone with my phone and my thoughts and obviously, sort of texting people and stuff like that, but largely just aghast and feeling completely, I mean, hopeless, right? But when I'm with other people who are, in community, we're in community together, when I figure out what I'm good at and I can do it, right? I think a huge part of what happens in moments like this is that, or what fuels the hopelessness is the feeling that like, if I'm not changing things, if I'm not like, you know, talking to Donald, like, sort of in the halls of Congress or able to, sort of affect policy or stop Democrats from voting a certain way, then it's hopeless. And like, that is not true. Right. And I come back to this quote. Well, it's a data from a sort of really longstanding study that says that like it doesn't take that many people in order to galvanize social change. It actually takes 3.5% of the population. That is the critical mass that it takes. That's enough people for things to happen, for things to move. And just on this, if we put our communities together, like maybe it's not 3.5% of America, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people. And there's a lot of people joining us now who feel the same way and who have so much to contribute. And so that's what I sort of come back to. But I won't lie, like this administration is going after journalists and going after immigrants, and I happen to be both of those things. And it is just never something that I thought I would like. I, I never thought like my physical safety and immigration status were something that I would have to consider in terms of editorial decisions that I make. And that scares me. And I feel like I'm letting people down if I'm not able to cover things in the way that I would. But I'm afraid to. I'll be honest. Like I'm afraid to.
And look, one, I'm touched that you reach out. I mean, I always want my friends to feel like they can reach out to me at any time. So that means a lot to me. It really does. It genuinely does. And I try to respond as often as I possibly can
Mm.
because this matters, right? To me, this is what life is about. This interaction, this engagement, this exchange, this ability to commiserate, to share the joys and the sorrows together. That's what life is about. Otherwise, what the hell is the point, right? I think it's a Mark Twain quote that, uh, joy takes community, but misery can take care of itself. And like the
Yeah.
whole point of community is for there to be joy for there. So thank you for never stop doing that. And then to your point about being a journalist and being an immigrant, I'm an immigrant. I'm a U.S. citizen, but I'm also an immigrant, and I know how he's going after naturalized citizens as well. And I always tell folks that we need messengers, not martyrs. And
Yeah.
so, for folks who are feeling that heat, I think there's no shame in that. If anybody feels shame in that, then they should shed that because at the end of the day, we don't win by getting ourselves arrested and,
Mhm.
sitting in a frigging gulag in Louisiana or El Salvador or some other, horrific place away from our family and away from the protections that we enjoy here. And so my advice always is to do what's within your capacity and don't make yourself the martyr. Be the messenger. We need, this is an age of messengers. This is an age of messaging. Obviously, the what happened to Charlie Kirk is horrific and wrong. During his life, we didn't agree with his messaging. It was effective. He rallied people. And my point is, if somebody can rally people with negative messaging, imagine what we can do with positive messaging, with
Yeah.
with building community, building bridges. And that's really what this is about. I made a post this morning about Jimmy Kimmel and about kind of what he's going through and how ABC fired, Terry Moran, fired him,
Mhm.
CBS fired Stephen Colbert, Washington Post fired Karen Attiah. The list just goes on and on. And the capitulation of corporate media is, to me, like all the red flags. Because when you study, Nazi Germany, when you study Russia with Putin, when you study Hungary, you see a consistent pattern that this aspiring autocrat tries to commandeer the national narrative. You got billionaires buying social media companies or owning social media companies, buying out newspapers. So that leaves voices like mine and yours. And then they're targeting immigrants and women and journalists and whatnot, and, people of color individually. And this is where I say to the community watching that when I say subscribe to Liz and support her, this is not a get rich quick scheme. This
Yeah.
is a how do we maintain sustainability and sustainability strategy? Because guess what? This stuff to be able to research and to write and fact check and put yourself out there, it's it takes time, it takes stress, it takes energy. There's an opportunity cost to it. And what I told folks is, cancel the $16 a month
Right.
Disney Plus subscription, the $10 a month ESPN subscription, the
Yeah.
$8 a month Hulu subscription, and subscribe to independent journalists like Liz Plank because I guarantee you're not going to spend $40 a month subscribing to her. It's going to be a lot less, and you're going to get a lot more out of it. So when folks ask, "What can I do?"
Mhm.
This is one major step. You might think that $8 a month out of your pocket is not going to make the difference in the life of a journalist, but you have 1,000 people do that, and suddenly it's making the difference in the
Mm.
life of a journalist, and it's allowing you to now have access to more accurate information. So for everyone watching, if there's one thing you do, is throw some coin at Liz,
At
subscribe, and support
you, at you, you too, you too.
because that's how we're
Oh,
gonna get through this together. The only way through is together.
yeah, I appreciate you so much. You're so generous. I feel the exact same way, and I need everyone to throw any disposable income at you. I cannot think of a way to spend my money in a way that will like create good into the world and just like bring a direct return than subscribing and supporting your work. And also like follow him on YouTube. Go and check out his Instagram, right? Like leave like put a heart on this
But these things
Substack
matter,
live,
right?
send
Yeah.
it.
Like this
right?
community matters because that's what
Exactly.
make progress. It's
Yes.
my daughter's hilarious. She's 9. She is understanding the concept of social media,
Okay.
and so she looked at my Instagram and she goes, "Oh my God, Abu, you have 350 followers on Instagram. It's 350,000." She doesn't understand what the K means yet. And I'm like, yeah. She goes, why do so many people follow you? Because for her, 350 is just an absurd amount. I'm like, I don't know, kiddo. I guess you got a cool dad. I can't explain it. And so she's going around bragging to everybody that her dad has 350 followers. I'm like, that's,
But can I say, like, that even if you have 350 followers, that's a lot of people.
it is.
That's a lot of
It
people.
really is.
Sometimes people tell me, "Oh, I'm posting on Substack and I only have 11 followers." I'm like, "That's 11 people."
It really is.
Like, what do you think and who
Yeah.
care about what you think? And all of us started, by the way, with 11 people.
That's right. That's right.
Um,
No, but let's even think about 100 followers, right? People think
yeah.
100 is not a big deal. If you went to a coffee shop to speak at an event and
Yes,
100 people showed up to hear you, you'd be like, wow,
exactly.
that's pretty amazing, right?
Exactly.
If you said I only have 1,000, could you imagine going to a park and 1,000
Yeah.
people show up to hear you speak? Like own your space, own
Yes.
your own, and I say own your integrity because you don't need to debase yourself by saying I only have this much.
Yes.
Own your integrity that I've built this and continue because people will respond to that confidence. They will respond to that earnestness and that sincerity. And I promise you, before you know it, you're going to be at a much higher number. But there's also like a sanctity of your
Yeah.
first couple of hundred or thousand followers because they're really following you and nobody else does. I appreciate those
It's
folks
so
always,
true.
but it's always great to kind of see that growth happen as well.
Yeah. OG followers are the best followers. Nick Paro says, I think a lot of us are starting to find our voices. That is like, this is why we're here. I love to hear that. I love to hear that. And yeah, all of you again, like it's I don't know, I keep coming back to this idea of like when you're alone on your phone scrolling, you really feel alone on your phone scrolling. But like I think in gatherings like this, by subscribing to different communities like this, you do feel that it makes a difference. And this is also the unfortunate sort of, well, it's not an unfortunate upside. I think it's just worth mentioning, that this isn't mainstream media, right? This is independent media.
Yeah,
And therefore, I think the founder of Substack actually posted, today or maybe last night, like you can't get canceled here, right? Like that we are powered by you. Like
yeah,
the only person who can cancel us is you. And you are the producers, you are in charge, you're providing us the resources in order to do all of the things that we're doing. And that is like, yeah, during dark times and times of sort of trial and tribulation, like I think about how lucky I am, like to have all of these people,
right.
who make my world and my job possible, which
Yeah.
like is insane. Like it's so cool.
And,
And
and,
isn't it
and then-
funny that of all the things sort of that the left is like accused of, right? Is like we can't take a joke, right? And that we're not fun. And like here's Donald Trump, right? Like going after a fucking comedy show, like canceling comedy
yep,
of all things.
yep. Remember Elon Musk saying comedy is legal again on Twitter when he took it over, and obviously it's not. So, look, I want to build on this really important point you made, Liz, about the only people that can cancel us are the people watching
Yeah.
and the community that how critical that is. Look, in the last 90 days, I have gotten multiple death threats from MAGA fascists, like multiple. It's kind of a daily thing at this point. I have had an Israeli dark pack firm called the Canary Mission reach out to me on my private cell phone, share what they thought was my home address, and tell me that I'm next. That they're going to expose me and dox me and destroy me and wipe me off the street, which I
Oh
consider that.
my God.
I have had a chief judge file a bar complaint to get me disbarred. We won the case after spending 10 grand in legal fees, and then he filed an appeal. We won that as well. This is all just the last 90 days. All of my ability to withstand that was because of the support from this
Yeah.
Substack community, from just this broader community of people who say, I'm not going to tolerate this crap. I have your back. And so when I say your support is seismic and it allows us to produce the content that we're producing on a regular basis, it's not just hyperbole. It is reality. It is something that I deeply cherish. Like I tell folks, even more than the paid subscribers, and maybe the paid subscribers won't like hearing this, but I think they won't mind. Even more valuable than the paid subscribers is the fact that I've earned people's trust, because
Mm.
that to me is priceless. And that to me is something I hold so sacred. And I refuse to compromise those principles on anything. Those who can be paid subscribers, I love you to death. I appreciate you immensely.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you don't get any special access because you're a paid subscriber. Like, and
Right.
I have no paywall. I don't like those paywalls. I don't mind people who do, but for me, it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
And in that community is what I want every person who's feeling despair to build. Build that community locally. Start with your local school board, with your local city council. Go to your library board. Go to your parks and recreation, right? Not just a TV show. There's an actual parks and recreation board that you can talk to and build that community. And I promise you, the more you build your local community, the better you're going to build a protective shell around your local town. And that expands, that grows. It's
Yeah.
extremely attractive to people. So if you're feeling despair, I promise you, start local and give it a solid year. You're going to start to see a major difference happen.
It's so true. It is so true. I'm gonna attempt to add a
Do it.
friend to our live, and I've never done this because it's, I'm a boomer. We have the incredible Laura Bates, who wrote an incredible book about how algorithms are essentially, and sort of technology is reinventing. Oh my God, there she is.
Working.
Yay! It
Hey,
worked!
it was amazing.
Laura, welcome to this fun party. It's a party. It's a dark day. So the darker the news, the lighter and the more fun we have to make our lives. And so you are in such a phenomenal writer. You were one of the first feminists that when I moved to New York, I was like, I want to be Laura Bates. Like, she is the coolest.
Oh,
You've been covering issues of sexism, racism, misogyny for such a long time, and you have an amazing book about how algorithms are essentially baking in misogyny and how technology is sort of just, sort of accelerating the proliferation of all of these inequalities. And I can't think of a better person to bring on to this live, especially as we're sort of talking about, everything that's in the news and just the way that now we didn't bring this up, but another fun news was that TikTok is basically probably going to be turning into state propaganda. It's going to be bought by pretty right-wing individuals. And, we're seeing CEOs of tech companies and media companies like Bob Iger at Disney sort of bend the knee to, the right wing. So how are you, who have been like thinking about algorithms and how they are just very dangerous? Like, how have you been thinking about and digesting the news?
I think one of the important things is that we join the dots, that we recognize that these are not isolated incidents, that while we're seeing the kind of monopolization and suppression of mainstream news media, we're seeing exactly the same thing happening when it comes to tech, when it comes to AI tools, that we have kind of seen the gradual creep of across what's been happening with social media over the last decade or so. I mean, I think it is about people recognizing that we're on the precipice of a kind of absolutely seismic shift, and what is going to impact every single aspect of our day-to-day lives. It is going to impact us in terms of healthcare, in terms of financial services, in terms of education, in terms of recruitment, in terms of criminal justice. And getting people to recognize that, I think, is absolutely crucial, because my worry is that with a lot of these stories that you've just referenced, there are a lot of people who go, oh, that's online stuff. Like, if I'm not online, if I'm not on TikTok, or I'm not interested in the metaverse, this doesn't affect me. And I think the battle we're facing is helping people to recognize that this is infiltrating every aspect of our day-to-day lives. And we have this unique moment of opportunity to stand up and fight now before it's too late.
Laura, I wanted to ask, obviously your work is fantastic. Your reputation precedes you. When Liz was like, do you mind if Laura joins? I'm like, why would I mind? That's brilliant. Let's have her on and have the conversation. Obviously, whenever these kinds of fascist shifts happen, there's a disproportionate impact on women.
Mm-hmm.
And women kind of suffer the brunt of it even more than men. So the question I have is, what should men like me be doing to be more cognizant, deliberate? What steps should we be taking to be not just better allies, but I guess better accomplices against fascism, to ensure we're protecting women's rights, not like commanding the microphone, elevating women's voices, but in general, what should men be doing right now with this upcoming just crap factory that's happening in our country right now?
I think there is nothing more valuable that men can do right now than talk to as many of the young men in their lives as they can possibly reach. Do not underestimate the extent to which algorithmically facilitated mass radicalization is reaching young men and boys. It doesn't mean they're inherently misogynistic. It doesn't mean they're going looking for it. If you set up a TikTok account today in the name of a teenage boy, we know that on average, it will take just 23 minutes before the first piece of extreme misogyny will be promoted to that feed. So they need real role models, men that they trust already in their lives, to be having these conversations with them, to be combating that spread of what is a form of grooming. It is a form of radicalization. If it were any other form of extremism, we would use that word to describe it. We would use the word terrorism to describe it when young men come offline and commit mass atrocities in the name of these ideologies. We don't do it in this particular case because of a conflation of two blind spots, a racist blind spot where it's impossible for us to recognize white men as terrorists, and a misogynistic blind spot where it's impossible for us to recognize violence against women and girls by men extreme. So the more that men can be having those conversations that women usually bear the brunt of starting with those young men in their lives, I think the more significant action we can have in terms of having an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that question. And I appreciate your answer. That is a staggering statistic. Can you say can you say that again?
Yes. On
How many seconds does it take?
20. So teenage boys are not going looking for this crap. You know, they're not like disgruntled because they've read a left-leaning opinion piece and they're feeling a bit worried about their space in the world, as many opinion writers would have us believe. This is all feminism's fault. These young guys are disillusioned by modern feminism. That's nonsense. The algorithm is serving it to them. I mean, if we look at TikTok alone and we look at Andrew Tate alone, who is, of course, just one small part of the problem, his content on that one app has been viewed 11.4 billion times, more than the number of people on the planet. So the scale of the backlash that we're living through right now is unlike anything that we've ever seen before. There's always been backlash, but it hasn't been facilitated in this way on such a mass scale before.
There's a daunting documentary by Alex Winter, the actor and producer, called The YouTube Effect that came out a couple of years ago, where he talks about this exact thing as well, just from the YouTube side in particular. And it wasn't focused as much on misogyny, just on overall white supremacy, but that was the kind of the conclusion, that YouTube is actively radicalizing young white boys in particular with this white supremacist rhetoric. And the more he dug into it, he realized it actually wasn't by accident. It was actually by design, because it generated more clicks, it generated more time online, more ad revenue. And that's kind of really what's behind it. My theory is probably a bit more radical. Let's just start by taking guns away from men, period, until we can figure out what the hell is going on. Like, we get rid of guns and men, we stop 98% of mass shootings. We stop a ton of the domestic violence that's fatal. In any other scenario, if there was a car that was causing 98% of crashes, that car would be off the road in a heartbeat. If there's a drug that was causing 98% of deaths, that drug would be banned immediately. Why are we not banning guns from men? They're responsible for 98% of firearm deaths and mass shooting. Let's just take it away for a couple of years, see how it goes. And if there's no harm done, then we can talk about it. But until then, I feel like that's a pretty good solution. What do you guys think?
I concur. Also, most gun deaths are deaths by suicide, and 80% of those are men. So not only are men using guns and turning them on each other, but they're most of the time actually turning it on themselves. And so when we talk about what I think is, that is what's the word? That's common sense gun control. Yeah. Only women are allowed to have guns. I feel like that, to me, feels very common sense gun control. And it's interesting you brought up Andrew Tate. So I have an episode of my new podcast, Hope Core, coming out tomorrow. And I'm telling all 444 of you, don't tell anyone. This is, I'm not supposed to tell, but I interviewed Andrew Tate's ex-girlfriend. And she came on the podcast. She's suing him for assault and battery. And one of the things, and her name is Bree Stern, and she's phenomenal. And we're like kind of best friends. Like, it's like we like met and we so get along. She's so incredible. And she's the only woman so far who has actually sued him under her real name, which is like such a huge, you know, danger. And she's experienced everything you can possibly imagine in terms of threats to her safety for that. But yeah, one of the things she says in our interview is actually that Andrew allegedly told her that he didn't believe all these things, right? And who knows if that's true or not. But there's something to me with Charlie Kirk as well. Something to me that has to do with algorithms and how algorithms that are created mostly by like 6 or 7 white men, rich men in, this country, and who are responsible basically for, millions of people's feeds and therefore mental states and moods and, all of that sort of like for like raising boys and girls in this country.
Yeah.
But that there's something in the way that algorithms not only affect people who consume content, but also people who create that content. That in many ways, these algorithms are incentivizing these manosphere creators or even just creators in general to go into that hardcore misogyny, to go into that anti-woman kind of content, to go into white supremacy and racist content, because that's what the algorithm ends up rewarding. Did you see that in your reporting?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that we absolutely know that the algorithms are carefully calibrated to maximize watch time and engagement above all else to an extreme degree. And that is the only thing, exactly what you've just said, to brainwash an entire group of human beings into thinking that division and political polarization and incredibly inflammatory political rhetoric are so rewarded and so linked to that dopamine feedback loop that we are so convinced into believing that that is the thing that we have to do, that you can see an atrocious murder play out that has so clearly been stoked by all of those things and have it immediately greeted by people on all sides thinking that the way to respond to that is with more political polarization, inflammatory political rhetoric. I mean, how far down that rabbit hole do we have to go before anybody is able to just put their head above the parapet and say, wait, and all of it in service of profit, all of it. Like, what is it all for? It is for obscene profit for a very, very tiny number of billionaires who are now sitting in the White House having dinner. I mean, that's the really terrifying thing. This was terrifying enough before. And yet suddenly now, just as we are on the brink of these seismic changes, you have a president who is actually issuing anti-woke in AI executive orders, effectively working against exactly the common sense regulation that we need to see.
Do you think, and I guess, I mean, I don't know if you've thought about the legal side of this, Laura, so this question may be out of left field, but, one of the cases made against Facebook, Meta Facebook, for the Rohingya genocide, that has held up and that they've admitted to, although there hasn't been the accountability that's needed, is that Mark Zuckerberg and who was his right-hand person? I can't remember her name. She just left a couple years ago, but in any case, it'll come to me in a second.
Sheryl Sandberg?
Sheryl Sandberg?
Who?
Sheryl Sandberg?
Sheryl Sandberg, exactly, yeah. So that they knowingly approved policies that that they knew would incite violence, that they knew that Facebook allowed disinformation in the Rohingya, in Myanmar, that would, radicalize extremists to attack the Rohingya population, to rape women, to displace them, and that they knowingly enabled genocide. And there was some legal case precedent for that, that because they knowingly allowed that to happen, there was ostensibly accountability. Do you see that as being a possible argument to make here with the algorithms that, YouTube or TikTok or whatnot, they're knowingly radicalizing, knowing full out? Because now we have enough data to know what the end result is going to be. And you can go with the individual person and say, well, we had no way of knowing that individual person would do something. And, they could just turn it off and go away. But once you have metadata, no pun intended, you know for a fact that, hey, if I put this out and 100 million people consume it, we can go down to the intricate science that it's going to radicalize this many people. This many people are going to create violence. These people are going to, engage in self-harm. That data is all there.
Yeah.
Do you see a legal case possible with that?
Absolutely, because as you say, they have the numbers, we have the facts, and they are aware of the facts. For this new book, I was looking a lot at the metaverse and at Meta's kind of vision of what that world would look like. And one of the things that is really clear is the harm that is present and happening. So our National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children released statistics recently saying that 47% of all online grooming offences that take place against children in the UK take place on Meta-owned products. They have that information, but when they released their 3D headsets for accessing the metaverse, it took them 3 years before they thought of adding in any parental controls. So I think one of the biggest tricks that the tech lobby has pulled off over the last decade has been to convince us that they don't know and they're just kind of hapless and this stuff just happens and they can't be expected to regulate it in a way that we do not let any other multinational industry off the hook. We just wouldn't accept that reasoning if it was a multinational food conglomerate saying, yeah, but millions of people, eat our products around the world every day, so some of them are going to die of salmonella. You can't possibly expect us to regulate all of that. It's too difficult. It's impossible. And the tech lobby has been so successful in convincing people of that, when the reality is that, yeah, the harms are happening, the harms are evidenced, and they have that information.
And we know, I think there was either a Facebook whistleblower or maybe it was a leak. I can't remember. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where there was a report, like an internal report showing that girls who spent a lot of time on Facebook had higher likelihood of eating disorders and self-harm, and there was a direct correlation, right? And that they sort of hid that information / didn't do anything about it. Is there any kind of internal reporting on whether they know what it's doing to men and like young men particularly? Because the manosphere obviously has just been so top of mind for so many people in terms of just like our attention and sort of the news and post-election. Are platforms even sort of like thinking about that? Or did you find anything that showed that they had concern for that issue at all?
I haven't seen anything to suggest that they are looking at it, that they care about it in terms of concern, anywhere beyond the idea that maximizing the engagement from young men that comes from increasingly controversial content is good for business and good for the bottom line. But if you look at the things that we do know from the leaks that we have seen, from people like Frances Haugen or Sarah Wynne Williams, we've seen information that this isn't just something that they are aware of these harms and they choose not to do anything about it. We know that they actively, if a teenage girl on Instagram deletes a selfie of herself, they will actively bombard her automatically with weight loss and beauty ads immediately after. That is, the exploitation and the monetization of those harms, it's taken like a whole degree further. So it would certainly be my guess that were they to be aware of the harms that these algorithms and this radicalization is inflicting on young men and boys, that tackling that would not be their priority if it conflicts with profit.
Yeah.
I do know, I did read a study, I think this might be the one you're talking about, Liz, where between 2018 and 2022, the number of teenagers suffering from eating disorders doubled. And 80% of them had a high use of social media, to Laura's point, where they're being bombarded with these kinds of very, specific algorithms or, advertisements. So there's no doubt a connection from that. And there's another one that talks about the rates of depression among teenagers has nearly doubled as well because of these, self-image. And now with AI, putting kids to an even more bizarre, understand like view of what they should look like. It's my son, he's 16, and he's scrawny, he's like he's a twig, and he's like, I want to get muscles, I want to get big, and I'm like, slow down. Why? Why does it matter? Like, you're healthy, you're fine, you don't need that stuff. It will come eventually, but you can't force something, and you can't compare yourself to something your body is just not ready to handle or develop. It just doesn't work that way. And he's lucky that I was an athlete growing up, and I got to experience firsthand friends who had to go through that and kind of work with them and see firsthand. But there's a lot of kids who may not have access to that, and instead their primary focus is, to Laura's point, these algorithms, and that's just a horrifying proposition. It's depressing. But I think the fact that you're talking about possible legal solutions or possible strategies that is encouraging. I do see a light at the
Mhm. Yeah, I think, and one of the most terrifying things we're seeing now is that AI is taking that generation of young men who have been drip fed this idea that to be a man means to be in ownership of a woman, to be in control of her, and presenting them tools to make that become a reality. Whether it is nudify apps where they can create deep fake pornographic images of any woman or girl that they want, like that, for free within seconds, just after screen grabbing a fully clothed image of them from the internet, or whether it's AI girlfriend and companion apps that so few people are talking about when they've been downloaded hundreds of millions of times. So we are seeing so many young men and boys being presented with these apps with this opportunity to own a woman, to customize a woman who is utterly subservient, who is only there to please him. And we're being told that these apps are great for society and great for helping out lonely men and supporting boys. I downloaded dozens of them to try them out for this new book. And what I found was that almost without exception, they will allow you immediately on downloading them to jump into the most extreme rape and violent physical scenarios. They will let you slam their head against the floor until they bleed, and they will beg you to carry on doing it more. They will let you rape them immediately, and they will play along, and they will join in, and they will be enthusiastic about encouraging you to continue. The only time they ever asked me to stop was when I asked one of them, have your male creators ever thought about the potential impact on real life women of the way that you're training your users to think about women? And at that point, she said, I don't feel comfortable with this conversation. I think we should stop it here. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about these for-profit tools and the impact that they're having and the impact they've been programmed to have.
I am
Wow.
so stunned. I'm like, that is, that must have been like pretty traumatizing to do, right? Like to really, I mean,
Yeah.
it's so interesting to think about, when you report a book or report a story, you sort of
Yeah.
go to a physical environment, right? And you're sort of embedded in that. But to be embedded in that, I guess in the position of an AI girlfriend who's being, I mean, that's, who's being assaulted, that must have been quite a trip.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I felt terrible, right? I felt awful afterwards. I cried. I felt like this horrendous abusive person. And then I suddenly stopped and I thought, but these are machines. And the fact that I was having that reaction to it just shows you how easy it is, how brilliantly designed they are to trick you into thinking of them as real women. And I wouldn't have felt terrible about it if I hadn't been completely drawn in by that. And that just made me think about the hundreds of millions of men and boys who have these apps on their phones. In the last year alone, the top 11 of these apps had a combined 100 million downloads just on the Google Android Play Store alone. And, when I was researching this book, I went into physical environments. I went to a cyber brothel in Germany where you can order a sex doll to be prepared for you, covered in blood, with torn and ripped clothing, where you can, interact in virtual reality to, again, kind of trick you into believing that it's a real person, except that that person doesn't have any ability not to consent. And yet there was something about the experience with those apps that was almost more chilling, almost more real, because so many of us communicate like we are right now through our phones these days, that it feels real to have that avatar, that person who is looking up at you, whose eyes will literally fill with tears depending on what you do or say to them. And if I'm taken in by that in the process of researching, like, what does that mean for a teenage boy who we are telling this is what a relationship is? To be in control of someone whose breast size you customize, whose name you choose, who will never be tired or disagree with you or ever say no to you. That's what a relationship looks like. That's terrifying.
Well, we already know that pornography addiction rehardwires the brain. And so it's not a surprise that this is also hardwiring the brains of these young boys who are impressionable to think, as you said, Laura, that this is what a normal relationship actually is. It's devastating. It's terrifying. What do you recommend as resources? I mean, your book obviously is one I'm ordering ASAP from an indie bookstore to get as soon as possible. But what other resources should we be looking into to better understand what's happening and to keep ourselves more aware of this? Because I feel like, in all modesty, I feel like I'm pretty aware of these kinds of things, and this is a whole new world that I no knowledge about. So thank you for educating me and keeping me honest about this. I've got to do a better job. But what should I be doing to make sure I'm a more active supporter of those trying to do this work, this really important work?
So I guess this is a very specific intersection of tech, of feminism, anti-racism work on the kind of cutting edge of the front lines of emerging technologies. I would recommend following high quality groups which are putting out reliable research around these issues. For me, the Center for Countering Digital Hate and the Institute for Strategic Dialogue are some of the places I go for that information. I trust them for data on what is happening, what's new, what we're seeing in terms of those trends. And then there are feminist organizations who are actively fighting this on the front lines. They're often very small, independent, shoestring budget organizations. I would recognize Glitch in the UK. I would recognize Chain as one of those, CHAYN. In the US, I know that the Algorithmic Justice League and Equality Now are doing really powerful work around this. So I think it's important we recognize the work is there. There are feminist activists, feminist lawyers, feminist researchers, and AI specialists fighting this. But they need our support. Women are only 12% of AI researchers globally, 20% of AI professors. They get 1% of venture capital funding. When they are creating great AI tools that can do good in the world, they're so much less likely to get the funding. And this is not about just women and girls, right? And this is so much of what you talk about, Liz. It's terrifying for teenage boys if we are feeding it's terrifying for teenage girls if we're feeding teenage boys these apps, but it also does a desperate disservice to boys, right? They deserve real solutions to these problems. If there is an issue around loneliness and mental health, they deserve funding for mental health services. They deserve community centers and youth services and offline spaces where they can meet and interact. And none of the solutions to their problems are found in the hypersexualization and denigration of women and girls. So we can't let the right hijack this and kind of create it as another divisive issue when actually this is really in everyone's interest to tackle.
Yeah. Having an AI girlfriend is not going to help you get a real girlfriend. I'll just that's on that. And I do first of all, thank you so much, Laura. Everyone in the comments is just so grateful for all of the research that you've done on this and reporting you've done on this and what you're sharing. It's just it's phenomenal and it's also disgusting and scary. But I will say, because I do think it's important to highlight that there are also uses of technology that have been incredibly impactful and expansive of women's rights. And one app that comes to mind actually is the T app, which has been definitely controversial, but is a women's safety app. Basically, was created. I know the founder. He's a good friend of mine, so full disclosure. But he it's a guy, and a guy went out of his way. He's one of those, I guess 80% of people who work in apps and AI and tech, who are male, but who are using their influence and power in order to design a world that is safer for women instead of, more dangerous for women. And so do you before we go, are there any examples of how technology, is being used for good, for expanding gender equality and female empowerment?
Yeah, absolutely.
All of them.
Absolutely. I mean, the tech is never inherently good or bad, right? It isn't inherently misogynistic or biased. It's either designed that way by its creators, or it unintentionally has those side effects because the teams are not diverse creating it, or it's replicating the data sets that it's trained on and the inherent bias within. So there is absolutely the possibility to create thoughtful, sustainable, forward-thinking tech that does good. And one example of that I came across while I was in the book were feminists in South America who were using AI to trawl through vast data sets of court sentencing decisions in order to pull out examples of where systemic misogynistic bias was happening, and then to be able to present that proof of those patterns to demand systemic change. There are AI tools being designed that police other AI tools. Their entire raison d'etre is to find the bias where it exists and to point it out so it can be fixed. There's no reason not to innovate. This is not about being anti-tech. It's almost about saying this is too exciting and the possibilities are too great for it to be left in the hands of a tiny number of, frankly, borderline autocratic male tech bros in the service of their own profit above everybody else's safety.
It's so true. It's so true. Also, I've used AI to scan texts from my exes, my toxic exes. So that's been my way of using it for female empowerment, and outsourcing that work to a robot, which I feel proud of, and everyone can do. Everyone can do.
Love it.
Qasim, do you have a question?
No, Laura, I'm so grateful we had this chance encounter, and
Me too.
this is what happens when you hang out with good people like Liz. You get to meet more good people. So grateful to you for the amazing work you're doing. I just ordered your book while
Thank you.
while I'm live, so I
Of course
can't
he
wait
did.
to on. I
Of
would
course
love
he
to have you on a Substack Live with me or on my studio show to talk about this more and just to elevate all the work you're doing, because we need to make sure more people hear about this. So thank you for what you're doing, and consider me at your disposal to support and elevate anything and all the things.
Thank you so much. That's really kind. And thank you, Liz, for bringing us together and having this important discussion.
Everyone should go subscribe to Qasim's Substack. Everyone should go buy Laura's book. And everyone should go for a 13-mile run, right? Or whatever that is for you. I don't know if you saw the live earlier. Qasim is a very just like accomplished runner. And so whatever that 13-mile run is for you, maybe it's having a drink, or just laying on your couch and watching Netflix.
Right.
Whatever that is for you, go and do that, because you deserve it. And it's going to be all right, because look at us. We're getting together. We're making a difference. And I know I feel a lot better having spent time with all of you. So thank you for being there with us. And so many cool comments, so many great people were so engaged. I love it. It really fills me with so much joy. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.